Hi friends, host Derek here, host of Talking to Fitness People, and today I'm going to be talking about the ENTJ personality type. I know two of them. Kunkel is one of them, one of my coaches, and my old high school friend Bailey Carell is the other one. Now, I think my dad is one as well. I'm pretty sure. Uh, Not 100%, but I feel pretty comfortable with that assessment. All right, so let's look at the ENTJ personality type. So, like I mentioned, I've got two definite examples I feel pretty confident about. Conkle and Bailey. And let's look at what they both did. What the sort of things that they do. Conkle, he was a finalist at nationals in Terp his senior year in high school, which is quite an accomplishment. It's hard to do, really, really hard to do. Now in college, he's got a super highly impacted schedule. He prioritizes his duties and tasks over things like social activities, which he doesn't seem to care for at all, particularly, except insofar as kind of squeezes between tasks. Bailey, high school friend of mine, everybody sort of gave him the benefit of the doubt as being the smartest one. He used to piss me off because I was definitely smarter than him, as far as I could tell. Well, but you don't get A's, Eric. Bailey gets straight A's. Bailey gets whatever on the SATs. SAT score is higher than yours. Yeah, well, he also studied and tried and shit, you know. Well, then that's why he's smarter. Well, no, it's why he's an ENTJ. So, regardless of that, Bailey's also proved to be much more successful than I, as well as being smarter than I, apparently. Uh, he went to Harvard. He has a Harvard law degree. Or he has a law degree. I don't know if it's Harvard Law, but he went to Harvard as an undergrad. He runs marathons. He's married to a Asian American author of some sort. I forget what her name is, but she's whatever. And that's his life, you know. And he's rich, and he's got everything under how he wants it, I guess. So, what makes the ENTJ tick? Well, first, let's look at this. What comes first in the ENTJ? It's TE, extroverted thinking. Now, we tend to think of extroverted thinking as a bossiness function. It's a directive function that tells people what to do and how to do it. But it's not necessarily that at all. In fact, in young ENTJs, it's kind of the opposite. What it really is a respect for hierarchy and protocols and a belief that external systems can produce good results. And so, for example, Kunkel, he never gives me any shit about anything, even though I'm sure he's got his opinions about how chaotic things are. I know he does. And when I mentioned it one time, he's like, well, now that you mention it. They've got a lot of goals and plans, and they're focused on outcomes and achievement. They're results oriented. So it's important for the ENTJ to be actively moving forward on these long-term goals that they set for themselves, and certainly that's what Kunkel's doing. I think once they meet those, they set new ones. That's why Bailey started taking up marathons, you know. Big stuff, big results-oriented stuff. Okay, so now let's look at NI. In the second slot, the ENTJ is endowed with NI, which makes them basically kind of the opposite or mirror of the INTP, who has TINE. The ENTJ has TENI. So this NI is used by the ENTJ to assure that actions that the ENTJ takes produce the expected result. In other words, NI tells them whether their protocol is going to work or not. And it tells it to them, it gives them a sense of, they look at a system, let's say a company or some sort of other organization, and they need to figure out solutions to systemic problems. Well, systemic problems require systemic solutions, so that's their thinking anyway. And they look at the pieces until, aha, if we change this and that and the other thing and make this protocol and that protocol, then things will run a lot more smoothly. But it's not just protocols like making rules, it's setting up systems, like setting up a system for my work right here. Now, I'm not my strong suit. In fact, it's not a conscious function for me. And so I use my SI more, try to organize things on the wall like that. But frankly, I did the whole TE thing in my last job when I had an employer. I made a 400-page document of nothing but TE shit, which goes to show you, just because it's not in your conscious stack doesn't mean you're not good at it, especially if it's number 6. So let me finish up with NI before I get ahead of myself. The ENTJ is going to be deliberate, or they're going to seem to engage in a lot of deliberation. They're not going to rush into things. And once they commit to something, once they begin something, they're not going to change lightly at all. And that's the last thing it says here, is they don't like arbitrary change. They want to see plans executed, not just sort of talked about and then left go asunder. Okay. Next, let's look at the next two cognitive functions. SE. For the ENTJ, SE manifests as an implementation function. So it's not about the physical body as in space, it's not about necessarily sports. Remember, it's in their third slot. It's like FE for me. It's a tool that they utilize to accomplish their goals of their first 2 slots, more or less. Lacey, you need to stop. So, Kunkel, he utilizes his body a lot in his interpretation speeches when he has to be very expressive with his body. And he's mastered this through a very methodically attained approach to practicing these sort of things. He doesn't have FE, but he's got NI to tell him when what he's doing is right or wrong. He's got TE to implement a system of studying and imitating and all that kind of stuff. And in fact, it worked beautifully. And I want at this moment to compare him to my friend Wheeler, who is an ESTJ. And I wanted to point out that your ESTJs are another TEFI type, but they're different from the ENTJs somewhat. The ESTJ, I would say, ESTJ and ENTJ can both be great debaters. ESTJ Wheeler is an amazing debate coach. One of the main differences, I would say, is that, and what's interesting also is that Wheeler, like Kunkel, was successful in expressiveness events. But Wheeler's was a little bit less expressive. Wheeler was doing original oratory. He was successful as a coach, he was successful as a competitor. Kunkel, interpretation. Well, which requires more artisticness, so to speak, is Kunkel's approach. He's learning very subtle differentiations between displays of emotions, this and that, and this and that. Whereas what Wheeler did, in contrast, because he's got SI in the second slot, he mastered and understood the system of original oratory perfectly. He understood what each speech was supposed to do, where all the emotional notes that we're supposed to hit were, and how to execute those. It wasn't something he would generalize very well at all. Kunkel can generalize out probably his interp skills a lot better than Wheeler can generalize out his OO skills. Because for Wheeler, it's an SI thing. It's something he learned and mastered. And he really practiced the shit out of it, and he just got it perfectly down. And that shows you the power of TESI. If you master complex algorithms like that and do it the same way every time and get a little bit better, well, I mean, you get awfully good at that shit. Whatever your specialty is, you're going to be super, super good at it. That's ESTJ. ENTJ is a little less specialized, I think, because they got NI in the second slot, which is, I'd say, more broadly useful or informative to one's life. Okay, so now in there, so the SE is going to make the ENTJ very reliable, very good with follow-through, very task-oriented. And then the FI is going to be a problem area for the ENTJ. I see that in Kunkel when he talks about feeling hurt about something that happened, like last year with the speech team or something. I can sense how much he struggles with finding the right amount of hurt to experience regarding certain things or other things, and how much that should persist and how much it shouldn't persist. And I can see him battling with those issues a little bit. And that makes sense just as I battle with my organizational shit. I mean, I have my keys in my hand, and then they're not there anymore. Where the fuck did I leave them? I don't know. I gotta look for them for 30 minutes. All right, so now let's look at the ENTJ shadow functions. The shadow functions go TINESIFE for the ENTJ. So the first one, the fifth shadow function, is what I call the best friend shadow function, or the gullibility shadow function. That means if an ENTJ is to be tricked by somebody, is to be overly assuming the best about somebody, it's going to be either an INTP or an ISTP. It's going to be somebody who leads with TI. Just as for me, if I'm going to be tricked by somebody, overly assuming the best about somebody, it's going to be by INFJ or INTJ. So in the second sixth slot, the second shadow slot, the sixth slot, the one which is their secret strength function. Just like TE is my secret strength. I don't use it consciously, really. I don't like to do things that way, but when called upon, I can beast mode it up. Well, so too with the ENTJ. This is why Kunkel, another reason why Kunkel is able to be so successful in interpretation, is he's using NE all the time without thinking about it. He doesn't value it. In fact, he devalues it. He devalues disruption. But he uses it all the time when he's trying to figure out how to shake things up a bit in his interp speeches. You know what I'm saying? And then in his seventh slot, his trickster function is going to be, and Bailey's is going to be SI. For them, they don't want to have to remember a bunch of shit. That's why they write everything down and have it all ordered externally. They don't want to have to mind their identity as an entity in time. They want to mind their identity as an entity in space and other people's identities in time and space. And then lastly, they've got the bedeviler, FE. When they get into trouble, when they get into big trouble, it's going to be some sort of FE fiasco. When they make a bad mistake, it's going to be an SI mistake. But when they get into trouble, it's going to be an FE fiasco, or they just fuck up badly in some extroverted feeling thing. But, ENTJs are great, mysterious a little bit, interesting, hard to understand because they're so driven and so task-oriented that they don't really have time for the sort of emotional engagement that a lot of types value highly. Last page I want to talk about is this. I think when we talk about these types, it's important to remember we talk about the NTs as though they're all so similar, but I think in reality you've got these guys are pretty similar. Your INTJ, your ENTJ, and your ESTJ, and your INFJ are splits, okay? And then these guys are pretty similar. Your ENTP, your INTP, your ISTJ, and your ENFP. These guys are splits. So there's one F in each of these, okay? It's the F with the intuition first. Those 8 types right there, I think the split is better made here than here. So I think we'd be better off saying these guys are a group instead of the NTs. There's no letter similarities, but these 4. The introverted thinking in the first slot, or extroverted thinking, or extroverted intuition in the first slot. One of those two, right? ISTJ and ENFPs are halfers. They get one half of it. ISTJs are renderers. ENFPs are disruptors. And then on the other side, these guys are finalizers and orderers. That's why they get their own side, and that's why it's better to cut it here instead of here. ESTJ is a lot more like ENTJ than he is like anything else. And they're quite similar, really, except for the distinction I made between sort of artistry versus algorithm. INFJ is way more like INTJ than like ENFP. Why? It's because of the NI, right? It's that NITE um, NITE, no, I'm sorry, NISE 14. The NISE 14, the intuitives, sure, but it's not just that, right? You got to include these ones. ISTJ, or is that P? Where's P? ISTP, it should be. Okay, ISTP, INFJ, ESTJ. ESTJ and INFJ go over here with INTJ and ENTJ. And then ISTP and ENFP go over here with the ENTP and INTP. These might broadly be called the disruptors. These guys be orderers. So that's my little take on ENTJs. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching Talk with Fan People.